how to make AI work for your business. By the end of this video, I'm going to show you how to evaluate if AI is a good solution for your business. First, we're going to talk about what AI is and is not. Second, we're going to look at the question that we should always ask before leveraging any new technology tool. And lastly, we're going to evaluate if you even have the team that you need to make AI a reality in your organization. Let's get started. First, let's talk about what AI is. AI stands for artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence is not something new. It's actually a term that was coined in the 1950s, y'all. In other words, it's over 70 years old. All that artificial intelligence is computers that are giving outputs that look human-like. It looks intelligent, hence the name. Now, it's a buzzword right now because of generative AI. People are looking at things like ChatGPT and Midjourney, and these are programs that create outputs that look like a human did it, whether it's in text or whether it's a picture or video. There's many different things it can do, but it looks human-like. And so AI basically works off of being trained off of large amounts of data. And based on the amount of information it has, it can then give outputs that are helpful. So because it can absorb so much more data than a human, it's much more accurate than humans once it's been trained and tweaked. So for instance, if we want to look at the field of medicine, what we're noticing is that AI, especially generative AI, is much better at creating prototypes as well as potential drug combinations to help people with different diseases, because it can go through the combinations and think, even though it's not thinking, much faster than humans. It's also much more accurate in reading test results to help us understand if someone's at risk for a particular disease or issue. To give you an idea of the power of generative AI, there's a company called LawGeeks that basically seeks to kind of displace lawyers. That's not what they say, but that's kind of what they're doing. And so they created something called LawGeeks AI, and they wanted to see how accurate it was against leading attorneys. And so what they did was they created this test where their LawGeeks AI and attorneys would spot check 5 non-disclosure agreements. What they found was that on average, their AI was not just 9% more accurate than the attorneys. That by itself is interesting. At a 94% accuracy rate, it's 9% more accurate than the humans. But it took those human attorneys on average 92 minutes to spot check those 5 NDAs. It took that LawGeeks AI 26 seconds. 26 seconds to be 9% more accurate. Think about how much money could be saved there. That's the power of AI. But let's talk about what it's not. It's not completely accurate. If you know someone that's super, super smart, but when they don't know the answer to something, they just make up something that sounds smart, then you know somebody that acts like generative AI does. So I mentioned the legal example, but a few months ago, there was an attorney in New York who actually leveraged ChatGPT and had it write out a motion for him. Unfortunately, it mentioned a case that didn't exist because remember, AI, generative AI, is pattern recognition. And so based on what you ask it, it gives you an output that it thinks you want to hear, right? And so it's not always accurate. So in this case, this poor attorney risks being disbarred right now. I'm sharing both sides of this to show that generative AI and AI in general is very powerful, and it still has drawbacks, and it's not completely in a place where it can replace humans. So let's talk about that question you should be asking yourself before you think about implementing any technology, not just AI. And that question is, what problems have you already identified that need to be solved? So when you go into your organization, do you know that you have supply chain issues? Do you know that you're not efficient in the way that your system is set up? What challenges are there? Do you have a talent shortage? Now, after you ask that question and you find out what your leading problems are, then you implement technology that solves those problems. What I don't want you to do is see a new piece of technology that's incredible and then invest the money to buy it and implement it, and it doesn't actually have a use yet. We don't find technology and then find a problem for it to solve. We identify a problem already, and then if we see technology that solves those problems, that's the technology that we purchase and implement. So when we think about using AI in our organizations, Right now, AI is extremely powerful, as I've already talked about. However, we have to be very careful because depending on which AI you're using, you could be putting sensitive data in there that could get you in trouble with different entities depending on your industry. You could actually be putting out trade secrets or other information you don't want to share. And so what we have to consider is security. Now, there's AI itself where you can go directly into places like Google Bard, or you can go directly into ChatGPT, the systems themselves. Or there's AI that's been created that will keep you within your organization. It's almost like with training wheels, and it helps customize it and keeps you within fences or gates to ensure that your security is not at risk. So when you think about using AI in your organization, make sure that you think about the security components and whether you need to use the tools directly or if you need to use a third party that kind of adjusts the tool so that it's better for your use and security. Quick question before we go on about AI. Have you already subscribed to this channel? If you have not, take a moment and subscribe right now. What are you waiting for? So now let's ask another question. Have you talked to your team yet about leveraging specific AI solutions within your organization? If you haven't, you want to talk to them so that you can brainstorm if they think it's a viable solution, and if so, what training wheels need to be put in place or boundaries to ensure that everything is secure and it's actually serving its purpose. One of the challenging things is that sometimes even the most visionary leaders, they're excited about change, they're excited about new technology or new ways of doing things, but they're not actually considering their team members. And sometimes these solutions that we think are valuable are not actually viable to the people that have to work with the tools or even bring in the change itself. And so I want you to go ahead and make sure that you're talking to your team members to see what they think and if it's something that's possible. And if they say it's not, it's just not a matter of them being negative. There might be some people that are closed and that they're dealing with some of their own mental biases, but sometimes what we're proposing really isn't a practical solution. So make sure that we're open to our team members. Our second to last step is if you're thinking about implementing AI in your organization so that solves a particular problem, now's the time for you to look at the data you already have. It might be your client data, it might be order data. This is the time for you to look at what you have in your systems and clean that up. Are there old accounts? Is there information that was parsed that didn't come over correctly? You want to make sure that your data, your information is in the best possible condition and that you know how you can actually transfer it into another system if you need to. It's not the sexiest part of using AI. It's probably one of the most important parts of using it because AI works off of data. The last step is to identify the AI tool or tools you'll be using and start implementing. You may need to bring in an outside consultant or team, but you definitely want to have some of your team members on board as well as they're being trained and upskilled so that then they can go out to their own individual sections of the company and ensure that they're showing their excitement and how this tool will make everyone else's lives better within the organization. So if you're looking at ways to implement AI in your organization, it's because you're thinking about the future and the longevity of your organization. You're going to notice that in the description of this video, there's a link to download a Future Ready Playbook. It's chock full of ideas and worksheets that'll help you be more strategic in planning for the future. If you haven't already downloaded it, go ahead and do it right now.